I'm Stephen Greenhut, Director of the Pacific Research Institute's Free Cities Center. We're a project that looks at urban issues and ways to make cities better. We look at some of the things that cities do wrong, and we also look at things that cities do right. And we're here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. According to PRI's economist, Wayne Weingarten, and his Free Cities Index, Colorado Springs scored a third place nationwide for a pro-growth city, and it's the top city in the West. So we're here to look at what makes Colorado Springs tick and why it's such an excellent city for doing business, and hopefully a city that promotes freedom and enterprise. Today we're going to be talking to Wayne Lageson, who's the editorial page editor of the Gazette, and we're going to be talking to some business owners and the mayor and a council member, and we'll also be talking to some longtime activists who have been promoting Colorado City freedom-oriented issues, deregulation, and pro-growth policies. So welcome to Colorado Springs. We're going to begin our discussion with the Pacific Research Institute economist Wayne Weingarten, author of the Free Cities Index. We're going to talk with Wayne about why Colorado Springs scored so highly and look at the different variables, the tax burden, the regulatory burden, the pro-growth policies of city leaders. And we're going to talk to him about why Colorado Springs scored so highly. And we're also going to draw lessons on California cities, which have scored towards the bottom of the rankings because of our tough regulatory climate and high tax rates. Wayne, I'd like you to discuss the Free Cities Index. What's that trying to accomplish? What was the genesis of it?
What we were trying to accomplish is really dig into the policies that actually affect how people make decisions. You make decisions much more on the locality, on the city you're going to be living in, not just the state. And a lot of indexes are comparing states at that state level. And what we really wanted to dig down is state policy matters, but local regulations matter. Tax rates in the city matter. Property taxes in the city matter. And so we wanted to dig down so we can see how do cities compare and how does the policy environment relate to where people want to live? Where are the populations growing? Are there commonalities? Where are the populations declining? Are there commonalities there as well?
Yeah, and when you say people making decisions, you mean people trying to relocate businesses, right? Is it both?
It's both. It's and they're interrelated, right? That people are going to follow where jobs are, and jobs are going to want to locate where people want to be. So it's a interactive process that you have going on there. But you have people choosing that place to live is the ultimate arbiter in terms of, is this the right policy environment? If I'm willing to relocate my family to a city, or I'm staying in that city, that is the ultimate vote in terms of, I like those policies. Whereas if I'm leaving a city, so New York City, San Francisco has been losing population, that's the ultimate vote against a city that you're willing to pick up and leave your home.
This isn't like one of those lists that there are all sorts of lists that considers things like entertainment and weather. This is just about pro-growth policies, right?
We were very explicit about this. This is a ranking, our judgment. You can use lots of different criteria to rank cities. We're very open. This is about those cities that have implement pro-growth policies. So what does that mean? Low taxes, better regulations, lighter regulations, have spending the money well, have higher quality life. So we do get into some non-economic issues, but we're talking about issues that policy impacts, like crime rates, homelessness, poverty, which is just interrelated. So all of these factors that are influenced by policy, but guided by the idea that you want to have a policy environment that's pro-growth. And it means low taxes, efficient spending, and less regulation. And we also include education, because when you're talking about families, right, the educational environment is incredibly important, because that's how your kids get the skills and the human capital for their success. So education policy, incredibly important. So all of these kind of quality of life factors that aren't necessarily economic, but they're interrelated.
Try to zero in on what makes for the city's high ranking.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of, actually a lot of commonalities between the top cities. So whether it's Charlotte, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, or Colorado Springs, Colorado, one of the things they had in common is that across the board they did well. So the cities that did poorly, San Francisco, New York, across the board they did poorly. They had high taxes, burdensome regulations. The cost of living, affordability was low, meaning that things were very expensive. In Colorado Springs, it wasn't perfect. No state was. No city was. Every city has room for improvement. But Colorado Springs, the tax burden was low, the quality of life was high, the affordability it was a very affordable place of living. And the way we measured affordability is we looked at costs, we looked at income because both matter. And what you get is you have a high income and a lower cost of living. So you're really, in terms of affordability in Colorado Springs, that was a real strength. The area that was weakest, and every city has weaknesses, where some of the regulations can be improved. Occupational licensing could be better. Minimum wage is high there. Zoning regulations could be improved. And
what are the lessons that the cities have done terribly, especially in California? What can they learn from the Free Cities Index and from Colorado Springs?
I think the most important lesson is they're doing poorly across the board. And so they need a complete reevaluation and start saying, how can we make improvements in each one of the areas that we've looked at that are important for creating a thriving city and for having a population and families want to move to those cities rather than leave those cities.
We're here to talk with Wayne Lageson, longtime editorial page editor of the Colorado Springs Gazette. The newspaper has played a key role in promoting limited government, pro-freedom, entrepreneurship type policies. And Wayne will give us a background of some of the history of the city, some of its political fights, and what makes it such an entrepreneur-friendly city right now. We're trying to get a fair appraisal of why Colorado Springs keeps rising to the top of every sort of study. Right. So how much of it is hype? How much of it is true? The city is growing, right?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think that if you look at America's 100 largest cities, I think this is 38th or 39th, somewhere in that, about 40th, right around there. And it sort of hovers there because other cities are growing as well. And I think among that group of cities, this may be one of the most functional, one of the safest, one of the most prosperous cities in the country for sure. And I think that's why we end up on those lists. Throw in a very desirable climate and a lot of nature's greatest amenities, and you have a city that a lot of people want to move to, and when they get here, they're happy here. And we let businesses thrive here. We make it, I think that city government, both mayors and the city council, have worked very hard to make this a place that cultivates business, that sort of wants to help this be a good environment to grow and to prosper in business.
What are some of the examples of policies that maybe the city's done that has encouraged entrepreneurship?
Well, it's done, and this is sort of controversial, but it's done taxing districts near the airport, for instance, where you can go and get tax breaks for putting a business in near the airport. Anywhere they want to incentivize business. Of course, a lot of cities do this, but they create tax incentive districts where it's cheaper to do business there than it is somewhere else. But also, this is the home of TABOR, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. Douglas Bruce, who wrote that law, lives here and has been elected to public office here. And Colorado enacted that in 93. I think Colorado Springs enacted it in 1992, and it puts taxpayers in charge of tax increases. So you cannot raise a tax in Colorado Springs without going to a vote of the people.
Oh, okay, and you pointed out that the city went to a strong mayor.
That's right.
Because in California, most of our cities, the bigger ones have a strong mayor, but the mayorship rotates among council members, and the city manager's running the show.
That's correct.
But here, that's how it used to be, right? And then you changed it. Maybe give a little history on that.
And that's a huge turn of events in Colorado Springs, because Colorado Springs has long been the second largest city in Colorado. Demographers predict it will be the largest city in Colorado. Not the metro area, but the city itself will outgrow Denver in the next 10 or 20 years. Now, go back to 2008, 2010. Colorado Springs was not making lists of best of cities, safest cities, best place to walk your dog, whatever it may be. Freedom Index, none of that. Instead, Colorado Springs at that time was a real cautionary tale. We were being written up in the New York Times, BBC, you name it, any media organization in the country in 2010 did a big story on how Colorado Springs was the symbol of fiscal conservative failure. This was a fiscally conservative, it was also a socially conservative city at the time. Fiscally conservative city, and at the time, the police department was selling off its helicopters because it needed money. The city was not maintaining parks and the strips between streets, and closed public restrooms. It actually, at one point, was deputizing cab drivers to provide additional law enforcement.
Oh, that's crazy.
And this was put out there as the city that wouldn't raise taxes, and this is the result of all of that. There was a us against them thing going on in city government, where the city government was about city government and the people were a burden to the city government, and that was really sort of the attitude. At that point, the community was onto it, we were onto it, we understood what was going on, and there was this big community effort to fundamentally change the type of government that we had, and that's when voters elected to have a separate mayor's office that was its own branch of government, a strong mayor, so to speak, and a legislative council. And that changed everything in a very short order. We had our first strong mayor ever elected in Colorado Springs was a man named Steve Bach. Steve Bach came in and very quickly instructed everyone, this government is about the people there. I answer to them and you answer to me. If that's not the way you feel, there's the door. And a lot of people did walk out. And he cleaned house that first year or two that he was in office. So he did the hard work. He came in and really cleaned up. And then Colorado Attorney General John Suthers was retiring as Attorney General, was not going to seek another term, was not going to run for governor. He decided he wanted to be mayor of Colorado Springs. And he came in right behind Bach and served 8 years. And having taken over the city after it had been cleaned up by someone who came in specifically to do that, to do the dirty work, and he just made it quite clear that in Colorado Springs, we're going to maintain roads and critical infrastructure, and we're going to let business be business and do what it wants to do. And from that point on, the council and the mayor have been really working in that direction, that life in big city America is really about the businesses that serve that community more than anything else, and making it safe, family-friendly, easy to get around. And those are the things that they have focused on. And that type of public policy has worked very well. And so you see, we have a very a thriving city. People are moving here in droves from Denver and from California and from other places that they kind of like to get away from.
Yeah, and I saw that there were predictions that it'll have 1 million population in about 20 years, which is...
Yeah, that's right. I think the city proper right now is about 480.
Yeah.
And metropolitan Colorado Springs is closer to 800 some thousand people. So.
Next, we talk with Mayor Yemi Mobolade and Councilman Brian Risley about what makes Colorado Springs such a pro-freedom, pro-growth city. We'll look at some of the policies they've embraced to promote opportunity and entrepreneurship. Mayor Yemi is an immigrant from Nigeria, and that's greatly influenced his governing philosophy. We'll listen to his compelling story about how he achieved the American dream here in Colorado Springs.
I grew up in a culture that taught values of hard work and persistence and grit. And I remember as a young kid, my dad would always say the sky's the limit, meaning that you can do anything. And so those are the values that I carry to my work as mayor, including some of the old proverbs that we were taught as kids. Like we say this a lot in America, it takes a village. And truly what that means is teamwork. Some of the best ideas and best initiatives require a team and a healthy team. I mean, we're a city that has limited resources. And so it forces you to be creative in terms of how you get other things done. And so in the absence of just having endless amount of resources, we have to dig deep and go, okay, how do we move things along? How do we make things work? And so we look at each other and we we work hard to ensure that we're talking, we're collaborating, we're working well together so that we can achieve those successes that other communities have as well.
In terms of collaboration, I think the mayor really hit on a key point, which is that because local government is intentionally constrained financially, we have to rely on our partners in private industry and even in the nonprofit sector. And I think what that does is it causes the city to be very hyper-focused on the core components of what local government should be about: public works, public safety, parks and recreation. We don't get into the weeds, so to speak, when it comes to building housing or managing other aspects. We don't do a lot of social programs, social services programs. And so by focusing local government on those key sort of core things that government, in my view, should be doing, it does drive this necessity to collaborate with our partners around the city. And so I think that's a piece of it.
Right.
I also think that Colorado Springs just generally has always been, or attempted to be, a place of collaboration and a place of sort of pulling together with a common vision. We're blessed in that we are not highly divided or divisive or highly partisan. And I think when we see that start to happen, we, those of us in leadership, sort of bristle at that, that we don't want to become that. We don't want to become this divisive community. We want to be really focused on finding solutions together that work for the majority of residents.
He is absolutely right. I think about the 90s and some of the not so great times of our own history, and that came of a lack of collaboration. So I think we've also learned from our mistakes. We know what works, we know what doesn't work. I moved to the city as a pastor. I started 3 businesses. My story, I feel like it's more important than who I am. My values are more important than a political label. So you can look at my story and you can say, oh wow, he's actually more conservative than we thought. But it's not even about being conservative. Or I feel like we live in a city that truly puts people over politics. And if you want to actually understand the essence of the politics of Colorado Springs, is actually not Republican or Democrat. You know what it is? We're actually more of a libertarian community. So at the core of who we are is a libertarian community, a community that champions free enterprises, is a community that is about limited government and not excess spending and good stewardship. And that's the essence of who Colorado Springs is.
As an architect, which is my background, and I am still working full time.
Yeah, he is.
I've worked in a number of jurisdictions really all across the western U.S., and I can personally say that Colorado Springs, El Paso County is one of the most business friendly when it comes to trying to break down the barriers, streamline the processes, remove some of the bureaucratic red tape, and allow projects to move forward as quickly and painlessly as possible. We do hear that from a lot of the businesses that choose to locate here. A few examples. The building department, in collaboration with the Chamber and EDC, has what we call a rapid response program. So if a company wants to locate in Colorado Springs, and they, for most businesses, all businesses, I would say, time is money. And so if it's going to take 18 months to get from square one to opening a new facility or standing up an operation, 18 months in, city ABC, and 12 months in Colorado Springs, obviously they're going to gravitate toward a place where they can open their doors faster. And so we really have done a lot of things to intentionally remove those barriers and try to limit the amount of regulatory oversight and process that's involved. So with this rapid response program, a client or a company could come to the chamber and say, I want to relocate to Colorado Springs. They could be given a designation to fall into this rapid response category. And then everybody from the planning department to public works to the building department knows that this is a priority project and does whatever they need to get the roadblocks out of the way and move the project forward rapidly.
We literally cut the process in half. So the time, speed to market in half. And housing is a top priority of ours. because it has an impact on economic growth and opportunity. We live in a proud military community. When I visit all 5 military installation bases, housing is one of the top needs, and so you can see that. I often say that it's now a matter of our nation's security, because when soldiers are worried about where they're going to live, now they're distracted from mission. So we want to ensure that we're doing our part to ensure our nation's safety. Now, the city is not a housing developer, and council member mentioned that. One of the things we do well as a city is we all have clear roles and responsibilities and boundaries around who does what. Now, my job is around health and safety, around developments, because when things are built, the whole city is dependent on the built environment. But when things are built, we have to ensure that lives are not hurt with development. So there's a fine line between health and safety and just red tape. So it is our job to ensure that those decisions are about the health and safety and not about red tape, because sometimes it's easy for government to grow unintended. But we want to make sure that we're removing barriers while protecting the health and safety of our community. So that's one way that shows up. The other way too is while I'm not I'm not a builder, I have a bully pulpit to be able to shine light on the needs and the issues, and to hopefully stimulate others to be a part of the solution. And I'll end with one of the really amazing trends we're seeing in Colorado Springs, and it's actually the faith communities stepping up to be a part of the housing solution. There's 4 churches now. One of them just opened the housing units, multifamily housing unit. There are 3 other churches looking at using excess church land for housing project. So I get to stand in front of pastors and help encourage them to step up to the plate and be a part of the housing solution. We don't have to do it, but we can encourage it. We can create incentives, and we can also remove those barriers so that we can increase speed to market. What makes this form of government so good is the push and pull of both branches, is the ebb and flow, is the tension, the good tension that happens as we're working together for the good of our residents. I'm focused on executing, operating. I'm running excellent services. They're focused on more on ordinances and laws and land use development issues. So separating those functions, I think it's healthy, and we see it's part of what makes America so great compared to so many other nations. This great experiment, in many ways, it's working. At this size, 500,000, we're a big city. And so in some ways, I'm glad that our form of government is also growing up to keep pace with the growth of our city.
From all the many people we've talked to, Colorado Springs is a growing, changing, economically diverse city. Here we talk with Mayor Yemi about what his vision is to accommodate that growth and to accommodate the changes.
Growth is going to happen. Even during my campaign, I remember using the analogy of being a parent of 3 young kids. They're going to grow. The question is not if whether or not they're going to grow, is how to affect good growth. And because Colorado Springs is such a desired city, number 1 most desirable city in the United States by U.S. News and World Report, number 3 best city to live by U.S. News and World Report, number 1 most neighborly city by Neighbor.com, number 3 best city for college grads to move, and the rankings go on and on and on. Okay, so it's not a best kept secret anymore. People see us, they're aware of us. So growth is going to happen. That's inevitable in terms of where we're at as a city. Now, we can either let it just happen, or we can help manage it to ensure that we're growing well. And now it ties into the analogy of how we raise our kids to ensure that they grow up to be productive and great citizens of our great nation. And so growth is going to happen. I'd like to believe that that's why we both ran, is to help shape the kind of future we want for the next generation. For me, certainly for my kids, is to ensure that we are pursuing growth that is intelligent, growth that is smart. Neither one of us want growth that is just silly and aimless and without good thought. But we want to ensure that we are growing well, and that's why, in part, I'm in public office, is to affect good growth of our city.
It's about growing with intentionality, and it's about being smart in the way that we grow. It's about being strategic in that growth. And I think one of the things that government can do and that we really focus on is trying to remove those barriers like we've discussed before, because what that will do is if the cost to develop is brought down, then obviously the cost of housing can be brought down, and the more supply is brought on the market obviously balances that demand. And we're actually seeing that happen successfully right now, where local rents have stabilized and actually declining slightly. We don't want them to drop off a cliff, and I don't think they will, but we're seeing the benefit of allowing the market to just do what it needs to do.
The market to do what it needs to do.
It's all about that supply and demand. And again, where the government can help is to get out of the way and let it do what it does. And again, try to remove as many costs and obstacles along the way as possible.
So we always ask ourselves the question, what is the most pragmatic solution? How can we be objective about this? What's in the best interest of our residents, our city, and how do we balance? This is really key. How do we balance compassion to our house with public safety to the greater residents? How do we ensure that we're making decisions that are maximizing the benefit of the common good? And that is Colorado Springs' true strength, is that we're very pragmatic. We pursue pragmatic, and as long as we continue to have leaders who put that at the forefront of our decision making, I think we're going to be good.
We're speaking with Steve Schuck, a longtime developer in Colorado Springs and something of a founding father of the modern city. He's going to talk to us about how Colorado Springs got to the place that it's at since when he arrived in the 1960s. Schuck is also a major player in Colorado and throughout the country on school choice issues, so he has some insight into those important freedom policies. And we had a great chat about the history of Colorado Springs, which was fascinating, and how it went from no place to this booming city that's supposed to have 1 million people in 20 years. Now, I think to summarize, you talked about it, how it was the old frontier spirit, and now it's getting more, politically correct, more like any other city. So can you explain that?
We're more cosmopolitan, and with that comes a more liberal, progressive, whatever you want to call it, a kind of influence. The frontier spirit that existed when I arrived, my late wife and I arrived here 60 years ago, is pretty much gone. And we're like many other cities, except we have one of the world's most beautiful backdrops. The weather, the scenery, the setting, the climate here is as good as it can get, and so obviously more and more people have found it attractive, and they bring with them much of the culture that they say they're trying to escape, and now they bring it to our community.
People from my state of California.
Yeah, you're the quintessential example. I remember when California was the frontier.
Right.
When LA was just another modest-sized city. So, I've watched it. I've watched what happened to California, and to the chagrin of some of us, that's what's happening here. We have tried to maintain sort of the cowboy ethic, the Western culture, independence, but that's a fight we're going to lose. All we can do is mitigate it. If somebody wants what we came for 63 years ago, then Colorado Springs is not the place to come. If you want an incredible quality of life with a lot of the amenities and sort of the family kind of family value kind of environment, we still offer that, and it's still part of our being. But it's going to be hard to resist gravity and just the natural momentum of things.
Now, Our economists did the Free Cities Index and found that Colorado Springs scored third in the country, top in the West. So things are still going pretty well, even if it's not the same as 60 years ago, right? So what do you think is key of what's going well in Colorado Springs?
That's a great question, Steve. I believe that there are enough of us who remember and will fight to try and maintain again the ethic, the culture that has made us so attractive, and there's the predominant amount of leadership, or predominant proportion of leadership in the community is locally based, and there's a commitment to try and sustain the qualities again that made us attractive to those who have immigrated like me. The people who were sort of leading the community 50, 60 years ago said the same things about us as we're saying about the newcomers.
And you came from New York, right?
Yes. And so it's just the natural process of things. I was going to say natural progress. Some people think it's positive, some people not so much.
Yeah.
But I do believe that we have maintained a sense of individuality and a sense of pride in the community. It's not just a place to live. This is a place. It's not just a place to make a living. And all of us feel a major sense of responsibility to leave it better than we found it.
And one last question is, I know you've done a lot of work in the school choice area, and Colorado Springs, does it have a vibrant choice mechanism of charter schools and things that's a core to creating a freedom-oriented city? It's having educational choice.
So the state regulations, state statutes provide for a robust amount of school choice within the public system itself. We have, thanks in great part to Democrat and Republican governors, we have a robust charter system. And but as to Colorado Springs specifically, we will be seeing in the very near future a major change in our urban school district, our sort of city center school district, that's going to reverse the focus from being on adults, i.e. the union, and the kids. There have been two successive boards of education that have been elected, and those members are totally dedicated to reallocating focus to improving student academic performance. And you're going to see, just as Colorado Springs sort of led the country, but we were certainly one of the leaders in building a very creative economic development program 50 years ago, which explains most of our economic success now. You will see an equally creative approach to running a school district that we think will be a model that will be emulated and replicated across the country.
In front of the Broadmoor, a famous resort, talking with Sean Page, an old friend of mine. Sean, I helped you get to Colorado Springs, correct?
That is true, yeah.
You came as the editorial page editor.
That's true.
And then you became a council member. Talk to me about Colorado Springs and the energy behind. There was an effort to push Colorado Springs in a more freedom-friendly direction.
Well, one of the things I noted coming from the belly of the beast, Washington, D.C., and coming to a small town, well, a small city, One, I had to get educated very fast as the editorial page editor because I was holding forth every day. But one of the things I noticed, I mean, Colorado Springs already had a very conservative reputation. And one of the things I noticed right off the bat was that Colorado Springs really did sort of do a lot of things differently in terms of government stuff. You know, we had a lot of functions here that are in municipal government elsewhere were privatized. We had a great Philharmonic that was privatized. We had a great art museum that is still and was privatized. We have an incredible zoo, again, privatized, not city owned. My garbage collection when I first moved here was privatized. It's not run by the city. We also own a utility, and that brings into energy issues and water issues that are very centrally important to this city. So I had to really bone up and learn a lot about all these things, which later paid off because inadvertently I ended up on city council and on the utility board. So all these theories and ideas I had as a journalist, I had this unique opportunity to put them into practice.
Tell me about Freedom Friendly or Freedom City USA or the genesis. There was a movement
Yes.
to make a distinctly pro-freedom agenda, which we always have to remind people that's not the same as giving away business subsidies.
Right. No, not at all. In
Yeah.
fact, we were that was part of what we were reacting against. One of the things I did notice when I came here for the newspaper work is that Colorado Springs was always looking elsewhere for a brand. It would send delegations to Oklahoma City or send delegations to some other city, always looking, what are they doing that we can learn from? And I often thought, why aren't we looking internally? Why aren't we becoming the model for what a city could be? Not that the cities that they went to were bad, but when I looked around at other cities around the country, I thought, why do we want to be like those cities? Why do we want to get into the incentives racket, bribing companies to stay there or go? I thought, you know, we have a very interesting model already going here, something I called Freedom City USA. I actually built a website. It's long dormant and gone at this point. But I thought, why not make freedom our brand? We're a limited government city. When you move here, we'll keep your taxes low. We'll keep the cost of entry low. We'll keep your cost of living low. We'll be friendly to businesses and streamline the regulatory processes that often get in the way. So that was the model I tried to build and worked on. And when I was on city council, we actually tried to put some of those things into action. One of the things I also noted about Colorado Springs is the civic life of this city is very strong. There are huge philanthropies here, really great organizations that do incredible work here. So I knew when I said, wait a minute, let's see if we can get private partners to come into the community centers. Let's see if we can get private partners to come into the pools. I threw that out there. It was budget cutting time and all this stuff was going to be axed. And I said, well, wait, let's give it 3 weeks. Let me go out and see if I can find private sector partners to come in and run the pools, to come in and run the community centers. And we did. And I just had this gut feeling that knowing this city the way I did at that point, that there are so many civic organizations here that do step up and perform a lot of important functions in town, that we could do that. And we did. And it's a point of pride for me that we ended up not closing those centers, but keeping them open with other vendors in them who delivered the same services. We didn't let outside actors come in and take these institutions over. They were still to provide the same services, and they did provide the same services.
Does that spirit still live on now?
Well, I wish I could say it does. I think there's been a lot of backsliding. I think we've fallen into the habits of a lot of municipalities around. We also changed our business model. At the time that I was on council, it was a city manager form of government. Then we changed to a strong mayor form of government. That sort of diminished the role that the city council plays. They still have incredible power as the utility board. In fact, much more power as the utility board than as city council. The decisions I made while on city council, the most discomfort I ever had making those decisions were utility decisions. And that's the one glaring oddity about the Springs is it does so many things right, but it continues to own its own utility company. It continues to own airport. I wanted to privatize the airport, and when I was on council, there was a window of opportunity where you could privatize TSA. I took that initiative to try to get TSA privatized at our airport, but none of the other council would go along with it. So I would say It's not bought into all the mistakes that big cities make, but it could be doing it could be doing a lot more than it's been doing. So I think, as for the Freedom City model, as I envisioned it, I think it's stalled. But I think there's opportunities to build it and revive it if there's an interest within this city to go out and say, hey, this is our model. Come here and you'll have a great quality of life, and we won't tax the hell out of you to do it, and we won't regulate the hell out of you to do it.
I'm here with Chuck Fowler in downtown Colorado Springs. Now, Chuck was actively involved in the efforts to make the Colorado Springs government more effective, efficient, freedom-oriented. Our economist, Wayne Weingarten, did a Free Cities Index, and Colorado Springs scored number 3 nationwide in terms of regulatory climate, quality of life, tax burden. So it's doing pretty well. It's a pro-growth city, but it had a lot of problems in that period that you describe. It wasn't always like this, right?
No, I would say it was probably the end of the innocent Colorado Springs town that a lot of people loved. The people who lived here had lived here for a long time. Their kids came back here and worked, and it was a tourist town and a military town. But it was growing, and it was having growing pains. Maybe it was growing a little too fast, but really the downturn with the financial collapse in 2008 had a profound effect, as I said, not only in Colorado Springs, but a lot of communities where the tax base just began to shrink. So then city services have to shrink. So what do? And that's where we were in 2009. The most expensive component of any government, really of any business, are the employees and how much you're paying them. Of course, in government, the taxpayers are paying for those employees. Most importantly, the thing is not what they're making now, but their pensions.
Right.
And it was the pensions that you can't really talk about pensions. Back in those days, it was off limits. It's the pension, the long-term pension liability that the city has to carry, and they didn't even carry it on their books back in those days because the bookkeeping requirements were different than they are now. But it was tough. The city essentially, Colorado Springs, was essentially bankrupt at the end of 2009.
So what did you do? What's the city committee?
Steve Bartlin, the general manager and president of the Broadmoor Hotel at that time, wrote a letter to Mayor Lionel Rivera and said, I just don't understand why it's costing so much to run this city. It was still a manageable city at that time. So he called attention to a number of areas, and the mayor never responded to him, which you really don't do.
Especially to the guy who's running one of the most important businesses in town.
Yeah, one of the biggest, most successful, most historic businesses in town. You don't ignore that guy. But he was ignored, and so that created kind of a minor controversy that I think brought Sean and me together that New Year's Eve afternoon where we met downtown and we said, this is crazy. Why is there no response to this letter? It's a legitimate thing. So we talked about it, and we called up Mr. Bartlin, and he was actually working that day, as he always did. Said, why don't you boys come up and we'll talk about all this and kind of sort it out. So we sat down with them and we said, there needs to be some kind of check right now on municipal government because there really is none other than what the media provides. And there was some of that, but there wasn't any check on what was going on. And there were some really strange things going on in that time. Expensive things. And we said, why don't we put this group together of people who know how to run a business with budgets close to the size of the Colorado Springs municipal government. And so that's what we did. We through various contexts, said, put a call out for CEOs to sign up for this if it's a volunteer activity that they might be interested in, to help us do a deep dive on the city's finances and where are they spending money and how are they spending it, why are they spending it that way, where cost savings could be found because we were in a deficit budget situation. And so that's what we did. We went about putting together a group of, I think the original group was 15 business people from very successful businesses in town. And we got together every other week. We actually got the financial data from the city downloaded into an Excel spreadsheet format so we could actually understand what the information had to say. Information published by the city at that time was really not understandable. So we had the information and we put it together the way they would put it together if it were their business that they were operating. So we began to see patterns and other opportunities to save money, mostly in personnel.
Next, we speak with Jonna Claymire, President and CEO of the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce. We're here to learn about the business community and how they view Colorado Springs and what makes it such a pro-growth, pro-entrepreneurship city. First off, do you find that as the representative for major businesses around the city, is it a very healthy city to do business?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in and around economic development for 30 years of my career, but I specifically moved to Colorado Springs 3 years ago for that very reason. I wanted to be in a place that was not only a place people wanted to move to, but a place that was welcoming for business. It's really the perfect recipe in that a place where people are wanting to come, where talent wants to be, a business will follow. And that's pretty nice in an economic developer's world, that we've got the right recipe.
Yeah, we've been around the town. Part of it is quality of life, which is, you can't do anything
Whatever
about that
means.
policy.
Yeah.
But we went to the Garden of the Gods and we're looking out at the beautiful mountains here. So that's part of it. But apparently the city has done some things correctly. And we're trying to pinpoint what are some of those things that you find.
Well, I like to say that people do come here for lifestyle. It's a beautiful city year round. If you have a healthy lifestyle where you want to be outdoors, you want to be hiking, biking, skiing, anything like that, we can be within a trail. There's 650 trails in Colorado Springs itself. So you can really have that harmony in life of a good work life, and at the same time you can enjoy the beauty of a place like this. So that does attract talent to our region. But you're correct. Our city has made some really smart investments. We continue to invest in infrastructure in our community. We continue to welcome manufacturing to our community. Aerospace and defense is a huge sector along with technology. And when you have 5 military installations, the number of people exiting each month after completing their military service, you just have a built-in workforce. They want to stay here after they retire or complete that service. And they have the right work ethic. They have skills. They have security clearance. Well, so that's a built-in workforce for these companies. So it's a perfect recipe, but it's been intentional by our government and by our businesses to invest not only in workforce training, but to invest in infrastructure, to invest in site readiness so that we have good product for companies looking to either expand or locate here. But at the end of the day, it has to be a place people want to live. And this is surely not a bad place where people want to live.
Well, when we talked to local businesses, they said that City Hall is pretty friendly towards, and we're from California where the cities aren't always very friendly towards business. A lot of red tape in many cases.
Right.
What's the red tape like here? Because ultimately, a growing business is dependent on a city, at least not just giving subsidies or investments, but in allowing them to do their thing. And what do
Right.
you hear from your businesses?
Well, at the end of the day, business cares about what the risk is, and time is risk, and uncertainty is risk. We try as a business community to work with our government leaders to ensure that we have rapid response when someone has a permitting issue, an incentive issue, whatever it might be, to help them get their doors open and be operating effectively. We never want to sacrifice safety. That always would come first in any kind of a regulation or permitting situation. But at the end of the day, we know who creates the jobs. We know who creates generational wealth. That's business. So therefore, we want to have an open door policy. I do agree. I'll speak to only the state of Colorado. This is an extremely pro-business area in the state of Colorado, whereas maybe there are other parts that wouldn't be seen as pro-business. We want to maintain that as a city and as a county and as a region. And I have no reason to believe we wouldn't, because we're winning when it comes to jobs and capital investment. And therefore, we're able to keep our tax base strong without raising taxes. And again, your average citizen realizes that that's because we're building a strong business base. So it all fits together, but we push constantly on our government officials to ensure that we have low regulation while we maintain safety, quick to serve business, and work at the speed of business. And I think our government officials are doing a really good job. Many of them are business owners themselves, so they understand the importance of time is money.
Yeah, we're in Old Town, Colorado City. We're heading over to Colorado Springs to see Terry Josiah Sharp and Kristen Sharp, owners of Anthem Music, a recording studio, and Boss Babe Networking, a social media business. And we're going to learn about why they moved from San Diego to Colorado Springs and what it's like doing business in the city.
So Anthem Music Enterprises is an international production company that uses art and entertainment to combat the mental health crisis. We're based here in Olympic City, USA, Colorado Springs, and we're excited to be here to share our talents with this region. As opposed to people coming in to rent out the space, we have more clients that are asking us to build their full-length albums. So we produce their albums, we help write it, compose it, and then help them understand how to distribute it and create a career in the creative industry. And so our skill set here, a majority of our staff or our team here is music-based. But we've expanded our team. So we bring in the videographers, the photographers, the dancers, the event coordinators, so that we can recognize the entire creative industry as opposed to just the music lane, which is what our specific skill set is.
We tell artists that when you walk into our building, we want you to know that dreams are possible. This building is a testament to that, of being able to have this dream of creating music and giving artists a voice. This was something that we had dreamed about. So Boss Babe Networking started during the height of the pandemic because of that, isolation that so many people and so many business owners were facing. And I had just transitioned out of the nonprofit that I created. I knew that God was calling me to do much more than just domestic violence advocacy. So created that business, and the next day after our first networking event, the world shut down. And I realized that there was a huge need for women in business. We aren't a chamber of commerce. I realized that women, especially those who have experienced trauma or domestic violence, we struggle with mental health and we struggle with that community aspect. And so being able to bring my advocacy background and business background together to create a business like Boss Babe Networking, we have served dozens of nonprofits and businesses over the last few years. Being able to help businesses share their story online and reach more people, ultimately giving them a whole nother stream of revenue for their business, has been really transformative for my own business, but for theirs as well. So I have been an entrepreneur for over a decade, and I started a nonprofit out there. And one of the things that I've realized moving here, where Colorado Springs is known to have more nonprofits per capita than anywhere in the country, bringing a nonprofit to a community that has many incredible causes was actually pretty easy to do. And I think one of the reasons why is community. I think that our city really equips people to come together, support one another, which is very different than San Diego. We are proud to say that we are great friends with our mayor, and we've actually had him in our building multiple times before we opened our doors. And that's very different than a big city like San Diego.
It has this small town feel. And I think what's beautiful about that is people really just want to do better for the city. And you don't always find that in kind of these big booming cities. And we're a booming city right now. But it's kind of special that we can go to, city council meetings and sit in and hear some of the policies that are getting enacted into our city and be a part of the conversation.
When we moved out here, I remember parking was just about $1 for the evening, which is very different than San Diego, or even things like gas or purchasing a home. When we found out how much cost of living was here, it was no question that our money would go farther here.
What's special about this city and I think unique is that we're one of the best cities for small businesses. And to me, that's a testament to the leadership in the city. And that's not just this current regime, but even the regimes before that helped lead up to where we're at right now.
I think it's a fair assessment to even saying that, whether it's small business or nonprofits, I think it's important for businesses or business owners to know they have a seat at the table, to have their voices heard, their questions answered. Anthem Music Enterprises celebrated our 5-year anniversary of being here in the community and serving our city. This is our community wall that we started. It has over 200 photos of different memories that we've been able to create over these last 5 years. Everything from shows at Sable Mesa to leadership gatherings, to high school graduations, to events happening here at Anthem Live Studios, to our mayor. He was here.
Here we are in the Garden of the Gods, a spectacular park just outside of Colorado Springs. We just finished up a couple days in the city, learning why it scored so highly on the Free Cities Index. We've talked to all sorts of people, business owners, civic leaders, the mayor, Chamber of Commerce officials, community activists, journalists, trying to figure out what makes the city tick. It's a variety of things. Some deal with a streamlined regulatory process, a pro-business attitude, relatively low tax rates, relatively affordable cost of living, at least by California standards. And as some of the business owners pointed out, there's just a sense of community and a willingness of people to pitch in and help one another. This all combines to one of the best business climates in the country. Well, and we see from being here in this park, which is just a few minutes outside of the city, that the quality of life here is spectacular. What can other cities learn from Colorado Springs? Maybe freedom, entrepreneurship, and a market economy should lead the way. Thank you for watching our video.